everyone, Carol from TazzieQuilts here. Today we are going to be making a super cute Valentine's Day tree skirt. So you might be wondering, what is a Valentine's Day tree and what is a Valentine's Day tree skirt? So lots of people, when they put their Christmas tree up, they want to extend the amount of time that they have their tree up. But obviously once Christmas is over, you can't really have Christmas still carrying on into January and February. In comes the Valentine's Day tree. So we're going to be whipping up this super cute tree skirt for a Valentine's Day tree. I found this adorable tree skirt pattern that we're going to be using today in our tutorial, and the fabric that we're going to be using to make up this tree skirt is Hand Dyes Batik fabric from Riley Blake Designs. So let's have a look at the fabric we're going to be using today. So look at this beautiful batik fabric. So this one here, this darker pink, is called soft wine. This lighter pink here is salmon. And then you can't really tell in the camera, but this is a white batik. Again, it's going to be very hard for the camera to pick it up, but it is a white batik fabric. It's not just Riley white, it is a batik. So these are the fabrics we're going to be using to make our tree skirt. They are beautiful. I love the amount of detail that you can see in both of these two pink fabrics. I think it's going to look beautiful in our tree skirt. All right, so let's have a look at the fabric requirements for our Christmas tree skirt pattern. So Tara did incorporate some time-saving techniques in here, and that is by doing strip piecing. So we will be doing strip piecing to do these diamond areas here inside the tree skirt. And she does mention that if you have issues doing angled cutting, in the pattern, she does include a diamond template that you can cut out and use this to get the specific angles that you need for the diamonds in the pattern. All right, so for this pattern, because we are making it a Valentine's Day tree skirt, I do have more Valentine's Day traditional colors. So I do have two versions of pink, and I'm going to be using white as well. So in the tree skirt pattern, she lists that you need 24 inches of Christmas fabric. So now part of the pattern also states that everything is going to be with the fabric. So from selvage to selvage, and then whatever the measurement is. So 24 inches of Christmas fabric. So that's going to be the green fabric you see here. So instead of Christmas tree fabric, I do have dark deep pink, and then I have this lighter, more traditional pink. Now they are both batiks, as you can see here. So I have 1 yard of each of these fabrics. So now you are going to need 24 inches of your feature fabric. So that's going to be the fabric here on the outside. And then you're going to need 14 inches of a rose print fabric. So now in the pattern, that's going to be this darker color that you see here. And then you're also going to need 14 inches of a cream print fabric. So that's going to be this lighter color here on the inside, and then the points here on the outside edges. So I am going to be using white. Then it also calls for 14 inches of green fabric for the binding. So that's going to be this little edging here. I will be using one of these. You're also going to need 52 inches by 52 inches of batting, so just a square piece of batting. You're going to need 52 inches of backing fabric, so again, a square piece of backing fabric. So it also calls for one coordinating button. So right there is the button. Now this is what's going to hold the tree skirt together. Now you don't have to actually make this a tree skirt. If you don't cut the hole in it, you can actually make this a table topper. So if you were doing the Christmas fabric, you can have a Christmas table topper, or you can do a Valentine's table topper. The finished size of this skirt is going to be approximately 46 inches. So 46 inches from tip to tip, and same thing, 46 inches from tip to tip this way. Now the pattern does specify all fabrics need to be pre-washed, and that'll take care of any kind of shrinking that you might experience if you're using cotton fabric. All right, so I've washed and dried and ironed all three of our fabrics. So now we're gonna go ahead and start cutting our pieces for our tree skirt. So I'm going to start with the light pink fabric, and that is going to be our feature fabric, which are these green squares here. Alright, so I have my light pink fabric cut out. So now this pattern does do with the fabric cuts, and then you subcut those with the fabric. So this is the subcut of the with the fabric strips that I did. So our light pink fabric is done for now, so let's move on to the dark pink fabric. Alright, so I cut what I need for the rose print section here of our pattern, but I am also using this fabric to do the binding of the quilt. So we're going to go ahead and cut out those pieces now. Alright, so the last thing we need to do is cut out the fabric for our cream sections here in the skirt. Alright, so we have our white and dark pink fabric strips cut out. So now we're going to go ahead and piece these together. So you're going to sew along the long edge one white and one dark pink fabric strip together. Now when you piece these strips together, you need to offset them by about 3 inches according to the pattern. So you don't want to start sewing them evenly like this. They need to be offset by about 3 inches, and then you'll just flip your fabric over and then you'll start sewing them together here. So you'll need to do this, offset it for all 3 strip sets. Okay, so we have all 3 of our strip sets sewn together. So now we're actually going to start cutting to get our diamonds from our pattern. And right now we are going to be cutting these right here. So in order to do these cuts, you're going to be using the 45-degree angle on your ruler. So I'm using my 6 by 24 inch ruler, and we're going to be utilizing this 45-degree angle. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to line your strip set up somewhere on your mat. You want to get it good and lined up so that you know it's on a good measurement mark, and then you can put the 45-degree angle on a line that's down below it. Okay, so first I'm gonna start off by starting with a fresh edge here. Okay, so I have my 45-degree angle line on one of the marks on my mat, and all I did was first I made sure that I was going to cut off the selvage, which I am, and then I also made sure that my ruler wasn't going to go past the edge of my dark pink strip here, and we are right at the corner there. So this is going to be the line for my first cut. All right, so now that I have my clean straight edge here, I can go ahead and start cutting out the rest of my segments to do the diamonds inside of my tree skirt. And again, you're gonna cut all 3 strips, but you need to end up with a total of 16 diamond segments. So let's go ahead and get to cutting. Alright, so this is what I have left from my 3rd strip set. So we can put this aside, and we have all 16 of our little strip set segments here. So now that these are cut, we can go ahead and move on to the next section. Okay, so now you want to take 2 of your strip set segments and you want them oriented the same way. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take one of them, we're going to take the left one, and we're going to rotate it 180 degrees. So now it'll look like this. So now, because you're working with angles instead of straight edges like you would like a regular 4-patch, when you sew these together, it's going to be a little wonky. So what you're going to do is you're going to overlap. You're going to go about 1/4 inch in here and 1/4 inch in here, and that is where you want these two to meet up. So you're going to end up overlapping it, like I said, 1/4 inch. If you're not 100% confident in eyeballing it, go ahead and break out your ruler. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to put it right along this line here, and I'm going to measure in 1/4 inch from this edge, and I'm just going to put a mark. So let's see. got that lined up, so right here, and I'll just scooch it over a smidge and put another mark right there. There we go. So what you can do is you can get a pin and you can stick it right through one of these little marks here and then line it up with the mark down here, and then all you do is continue pinning it, and then you'll know that the seam's going to be perfect. So now once you get that pinned, again, you'll see over here we have a 1/4 inch of our tail hanging off over here, and then same thing, a 1/4 inch of our tail hanging off over here. So now let's go ahead and get this seam sewn. All right, so we have our seam sewn here, so let's go ahead and open it up. And we do still need to press this, but we're just gonna finger press it for now. So look at how nicely that comes out. So you can even still see my water-soluble pen marks in there. So I just need to go and spritz this with some water. And then you'll wanna make sure if you are using a water-soluble pen, you wanna make sure that you spritz it with the water and it's completely gone before you hit it with the iron, because depending on the pen, if you hit it with the iron first, it could set this ink in there. So we're gonna go ahead and sew the rest of our units here, and you wanna end up with 8 units like this. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we have all of our little 4-patch, if you will, sections sewn together. I already love how this is coming out so far. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of our 4-patch segments here, and we're going to work on 2 at a time. We're going to sew this seam here. So I'm just gonna overlap it here just so you can kind of get an idea. So we're going to sew this seam here, but when we add in our light pink square, which is gonna go right here, this intersection here it can get a little tricky because it is a Y seam. So the Y is, this is the stick, and then these 2 are the arms. So you've got your Y right here. Y seams can be a little tricky, especially if you've never done them before. But we've got a little trick to help us out, and we're going to pull out our marking pen and our little ruler again, and we're going to mark a 1/4 inch up on both sides right here, and we're going to go ahead and do it on the back side because this is where we are going to be sewing. So we are marking that because when we sew this seam together, we need to stop a 1/4 inch from the end. That's going to make doing the Y seam significantly easier, because if you sew all the way down, you're gonna have to open up these stitches in order to put in your feature block over here. So when you're laying out your blocks, you want to try and keep in mind how your seams are going to go. So like right here, these 2 seams will nest nicely, so I don't have to worry about it. But if I turn this block around, now both of my seams are going in the same direction. So just kind of be mindful of that when you are laying it out, and you should be good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew this seam, again stopping a 1/4 inch from the end, and I'm going to do a little back stitch right here just to lock my stitches in place. Okay, so we've sewn our seam here. Again, I stopped a 1/4 inch from the edge, so let me show you what it looks like when we open it up. And again, because I was able to nest these 2 seams, look at how crisp that point is right there. And then down here on the bottom, we've got our open seam right here. So now this section is done for now. So we need to do the same thing to the remaining diamond section. So I'm going to go ahead and get those ready to go and get them stitched together. All right, so I wanted to show you another way to mark this stopping spot here that might be a little more beginner friendly. So you can take your ruler, and I'm going to line it up. I'm going to line my 1/4 inch mark up right here on this outside edge. And we'll just bring this down just so I have this right here on the very edge. And I'm just going to draw a little line right here. I'm not doing it super dark, but this is on the inside of the fabric, so you're not gonna see it anyway. So I drew a little line right there. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on this outside edge right here. Again, I'm gonna line up my 1/4 inch mark with my edge of the fabric here, and I'm just going to draw another line that intersects with the one that I just drew. So right here is essentially X marks the spot, and hopefully you can see that. Let's see. There you go. So right here is the X marks the spot. So you can put your needle down right here in this center and start stitching that way instead of starting at the tip over here. If you set your needle right in this center spot here on your X, go a couple of stitches in and then back stitch a smidge and then go the rest of the way. That might be easier, especially if you're new to Y seams. I've got these 4 sections sewn together. For the seams that we just sewed, the pattern recommends that you press the seams open, and that's what I've done here. You can see here that this center seam has been pressed open, is it's going to reduce the bulk here when you add in your feature fabric for this block section here. So I have pressed all of my seams open. So now what we're going to do, we're going to join this top section with this bottom section, and then this top section with this bottom section. You're gonna wanna stop a 1/4 inch from both of these end sections here. All right, so I've sewn this section to this section, and that is this seam right here, and same thing for this section to this section, and that is this seam. So now what we need to do is sew this seam right here, and again we're going to stop a 1/4 inch from the end on both sides. Now this center section here, so you are going to have 8 pieces of fabric meeting up in one section. So when you get to this spot, maybe consider slowing down just a smidge, just so you don't potentially have a needle break, because this is going to be very, very bulky right here. All right, so we have sewn our center seam, and this little center point here came out very, very well. I'm actually very happy with how this turned out. And you can probably see it through the fabric. I did press my seam open, and that will really help reduce the bulk for when you're doing this versus if you press all of your seams to one side. So I did press my seam open, so it looks really good, and this is what the inside should look like for yours as well. Okay, so now the next step is we're going to be putting our feature fabric into their places along the outside edges of our star. So because you are dealing with partial seams, again, we're gonna be dealing with measuring in a 1/4 inch from what we're sewing so that we make sure our seams start and end where they're supposed to. So to make that easier, I did go ahead and I marked all of my blocks. One corner has a little X, and the center of that X is where my needle needs to go to start our seam. So the pattern says that when you do your seam, so you're gonna wanna start with your fabric on top, with your feature fabric on top of the star fabric. So this is where my little X is. So we want the X to be here in the center. You need to pick a side that you're gonna start on. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start on my left side here. And because my X is right here, I'm just going to turn this so that once it's done, we'll say this is the ugly side of the fabric, even though it's a batik, so both sides are pretty, but this will be the ugly side, so once it's sewn together, it'll flip open like this, and then same thing over here, ugly side of fabric, and it'll flip open. So we're going to start on this side, and this is where the X will come in handy because we will unfold this side right here. We want the X to be right here at the edge of the fabric, but because this fabric has been pressed, we need to unfold that so that you can get all of your seam allowance right here. So then what we'll do is we will line up our feature fabric with the edge right in here, and then that's where you will put your needle straight through the center of that X, and then you're gonna wanna sew out to the edge of the star. All right, so we've sewn our seam all the way down to the edge. So now we need to do this other side over here. So to do that side, you're going to flip your fabric, your feature fabric, over on top of the other side of your little star point here. So once you flip this over again, you're going to want to make sure that your feature fabric here is sticking out, your little seam allowance over here. You want to make sure that it's unfolded, and then you want to line up your feature fabric with this edge right here. And then you're going to want to put your needle right down in the same starting spot as your other stitch line. So you want to start your needle right in this spot, and then you're going to sew all the way out to the edge of your star point. We completed this seam over here, and actually I found it easier to start the seam at the edge of the star point and work my way back towards where I started my first seam at, because then I could see, one, it was on the right side of my sewing machine. I'm right-handed, so by starting at the point and working my way in, I found it easier. So again, we ended our seam right here at the very beginning of our other seam, and this is what it looks like. So now we still need to press our seams that we just sewed, and this is what it looks like on the back. So this is what it should look like. So you don't want your seam to go into this seam allowance, and you don't want this seam to go into this seam allowance. By stopping right here at this 1/4 inch mark, you're going to have a crisp looking outside of the block. And then, like I said, we still need to press our seams, so that's when you'll kind of rearrange this fabric here. You want to try and flatten this out, and then tuck this point over, and then give everything a nice good press. Now we have 7 other feature fabric blocks to do, so I'm going to go ahead and get all of those sewn into their places. Alright, so here is our completed top. So now all of our feature fabric blocks are sewn in. I still need to press the seams, but I wanted to show you all what it looks like with the blocks added to it. I love the way this is coming out. I'm super excited to get it quilted and then actually get it underneath the tree, but I had to show you guys what it looks like so far. Alright, so I have my backing fabric piece. I've got it loaded onto the quilt frame. I've got my batting, and I've got my tree skirt loaded up and ready to go. I've selected a super cute pantograph for our little tree skirt. The pantograph is called Love Knot, and it's by Urban Elements. So I've finished the quilting for our tree skirt. So that's the front, and here's the back. So I love the way this pantograph pattern came out. I'll show you close-ups here in a little bit. So now we can move on to the next step, which is cutting out all of the excess backing fabric and batting that we have so that we can go ahead and put our binding on. So let's go ahead and get this cut out. Excess backing fabric and batting cut out. So now, before we can attach our binding, because I am doing the tree skirt version instead of a tabletopper version of this pattern, I do need to cut out my center hole along with a slit all the way down to the edge so that we can wrap it around our tree. So the pattern says to just use any kind of circular object that you have. So I have my giant cone of monofilament thread, and I'm just going to put the center right over the center point here. And it has a hole on the top so I can look down and make sure it's actually centered. Alright, so I like the placement of that. So now I'm just going to use my water-soluble pen, and I'm going to draw around my thread cone here. There. That looks good. So I've got that drawn. So now I need to draw the line that's going to bring it all the way out to the edge. So I'm going to make my slit right here. So now I'm just going to lay my ruler down and I'm going to line it up here with the center point, match it up with this point, and try and get it where my point would be down here. And then I'm just going to draw my line straight through. There. So now all we need to do is cut this line and cut out my circle, and we can attach our binding. So now again, you want to make sure the quilting on the skirt is done before you cut this out. If you cut it out before the quilting is done, it's not going to be stabilized. It's going to be very difficult to work with. So make sure your quilting is done first. All right, so we have our center cut out here. So now this is open, and this is where we're going to be attaching our binding. So let's go ahead and get our binding strips. All right, so my binding is ready to go. So now we can go ahead and attach the binding. And if you're going to be putting a quilt label on the back, I like to put mine in with my binding. This way the binding actually holds it down. So I have my little satin label here that I will be attaching as I attach my binding. So let's go ahead and head over to the sewing machine. All right, so our binding is done on the back. So now we just need to turn it over and attach it to the front. So now part of the pattern does call for you to take a little bit of your leftover binding fabric, and here I've already pressed it so that there is a fold right in the center. So you're gonna wanna take 4 inches of your binding fabric, and you're gonna wanna fold the 2 edges into the center like this, and then press it, and then fold it again like this, and then stitch down the open side. And I've done that here. So now this is going to be our loop for our button, and that is what's going to keep our tree skirt closed. So now the pattern has you attach it on the back side when you're putting in your binding. I actually want my loop on the front side because I'm going to be making a button using the same fabric that I used here on the tree skirt itself. So I want that to be on the front because I do want it to show. So I've got my little 4 inches of fabric here. So I will be attaching it to the front, and then the plan is, so it's going to go like this. And I do have white thread on one side, and on the other side, I did use the same So Fine thread that I used to do my quilting on the tree skirt, so it will match. So I'm going to attach it like this. We'll fold the binding over and stitch that down, and then I'm going to fold my little loop over like this and stitch that down. So when you see it, you'll be looking at this pretty side with the pink thread on it, and it doesn't matter how you do it. You can do it like this, or you can do it like this, whichever way it wants to lay, honestly. So I will be attaching this in my binding on the front side of the quilt. We are like 98% of the way done. So the only thing we still have left to do is to do the button right here for our little loop. So this is what we're using to make our button today. So this is by Dritz, and it's a craft cover button kit. It comes with everything you need to make a 7/8 inch button. Now it will have, my button today will have the shank on the back side of it, and this is so that I can stitch it onto the tree skirt. So it comes with everything you need. So it comes with a template, it comes with the pressing mold, and it comes with this little hard plastic piece to press everything together. And then this is what our fabric will be sitting against. So again, I am using fabric from the tree skirt so that it'll match. So I have a scrap piece of fabric here. So I have my fabric. I'm going to take my template from my button kit, and I'm just gonna set it here just to make sure I have enough fabric to do my button. And I do, so now I'm going to go ahead and mark what I need, because you don't need all of this fabric. So I'm just going to do a circle, and then I'm going to cut out the actual part that I need. So what I like about this kit is this template has a little circle or an empty hole in the middle, where if you wanted to do like a fussy cut on your button and have a little image right in the center of your button, you just want to center your little template here over what you want to be center on your button, and then you can see it, you can cut out where you need to cut out. So this is what I need. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out. All right, so I have my piece of fabric cut out. Now, the good thing or the great thing about batiks is there is no right or wrong side. It looks the same on both sides. But if you are not using a batik fabric, you wanna take your pretty side and you wanna face it down into this little mold here that it comes with. So this is what you will put your fabric in. It goes right here in the center. There's a little indent for it to sit. And then we will put our button piece in next. So pretty side facing down. And because this is clear, you can actually use it to make sure your fabric is centered. So if you see your little image in there, you can kind of center it where it needs to be. And then you can just flip it back over and then that'll be ready to go. So now ours is centered. So now I'm going to take this little piece. This is just a domed piece. It's hollow on the inside. I'm going to set it right on top, and then you just want to push it in just a little bit, and it'll be a little difficult, so you'll want to give it, you know, a good little push. And it's only going to go in about maybe 1/4 of an inch. So you're going to push that in, make sure it's seated nicely. And then you're going to fold these pieces of the fabric into that void in the back of our little button here. So I'm just going to try and fold that over as nice as I can. Squish it in there. And you can always spritz it too if you have some starch or a little bit of water. You can spritz it to help fold it in even tighter. I think that's good. So we've got that folded in. Next, I'm going to take my backing with my shank on it, and I'm going to set it right in there. So now this is where it can get a little tricky. So you're going to want to take your little plastic piece and set it. It has an opening on one side, and then it's solid on the outside. So you want to take opening face down, and I'm going to try and straighten that out, and you want to set it over top of the shank. So this is where it gets tricky because the shank part wants to move around on you. So we're going to try and get it as centered as we can, and then you're going to want to push down. So you need to push a good amount to make sure it seats in there properly. So mine did seat properly, so let me show you here. So this is what it should look like. So you should see a little bit of fabric on either side right there. And that's how you know it's seating properly. If you have one side that has fabric and one side that does not, your shank has not set properly and it will probably come undone. Okay, so ours is good. So now all you need to do is push out, and here is our completed button. Look at how super cute that is. I love this little button kit. I wish I would have found it sooner. I had never tried making my own buttons before, but now that I have it, I can. And now we can have our button matching for our tree skirt. We can lay out our tree skirt here. And now we just need to find the placement for our button. So I'm just gonna kind of straighten this up a little bit. There we go. All right, and I'm just gonna line up these 2 points right here, these 2 edges. And then I'm just gonna fold this over, and I'll be able to look and figure out where about I want my button. So I think I'm just gonna butt it right up against the binding here, and that'll allow me to move the button around, and I'll be able to get it into my little loop here. So I think I'm gonna get my marking pen and just mark the tiniest little dot right inside here. So, boop. Right there. You might not even be able to see that. Let me zoom in here. There, right there. The tiniest little blue dot. So now I just need to get my needle and thread, and I'm going to sew this button right to that spot right there. So our button is now sewn into place. So I didn't do it super duper tight. I wanted to leave a little bit of wiggle room. So, but it is sewn on, and you just slide your little loop right over top of it. There. And then this will keep your tree skirt nice and closed up around the tree. So yeah, I really like how this came out. I'm excited to go put it around the tree. Today's tutorial of making our Valentine's Day tree skirt. This is my first tree skirt, and I have to say I loved the entire process. From the super cute pattern to the beautiful Hand Dyes Batik fabric, I loved every aspect of putting this tree skirt together. If you want to pick up your copy of the tree skirt pattern, I do have it linked in the description down below. This will take you to TazzieQuilts' Etsy shop. You can get the pattern from her. If you love the batik fabric that we used in the video today, I also have links to that in the description down below where you can pick up your yardage of this beautiful batik fabric. If you liked what you saw in today's video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel yet, please make sure you do so by hitting the subscribe button. I will have a bonus video coming out using this same batik fabric to make some adorable matching Valentine's ornaments to go with your Valentine's Day tree skirt. So make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss that video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I will see you all later.